Guys, welcome to The Disruptors, the show for people creating a better future. Today we've got somebody doing that in a little house. Morten Bove on the program. I'm butchering the name, but we're going to get to the business in a second. Hopefully that'll make it good enough. Morten, thanks for coming today.
Morten, thank you very much. Morten Bove, I think, is how I try to say it in English, but it's a Danish Germanic name.
Morten Bove. My wife is Swiss. I do German, but it's just not coming to me right now. We're not going to get it, but that's okay. We got
No
a lot
problem.
of things to cover. Morten reached out to
Exactly.
me. He reached out on Twitter. We were chit chatting back and forth, and they've got a really cool startup, basically trying to save the world with small houses that are recycling and making things more sustainable. So, quick 30,000-foot view. Morten, tell me a little bit more about you, what you're doing with Wohn.
Yes. I'm the founder of Wohn, and what we do, we upcycle waste plastic and waste glass and basically make tiny homes out of it. Tiny homes which are sort of affordable. That's one issue, and they're sustainable, which is very obvious when you talk about waste, which you turn into homes, and they're circular as well. We're circular from the very sort of sourcing from the waste to also in the way we think the homes are, that you can actually move the home around depending on where the demand for homes is. And then also at the end of the day, when the home is no longer a home, when you sort of have to demolish it, it goes basically back into the grind and we can build new homes out of it. So we talk about sort of three-level sort of circulation of the home.
You're basically trying to design the home of the future for a smaller world or for urban environments.
Yes, because the point is, if you look at, say, what's actually happening, what's the landscape we're sort of operating in, what's happening right now, you have these sort of 200,000 people basically moving to a city every day, not like one big sort of bunch of people, sort of moving into cities all over the world, 200,000 people a day. At the same time, sort of United Nations, they sort of estimate that you have demand for 2 billion homes within the next 80 years. And then at the same time, in 2030, OECD says 40% of these households will be single person households, which to me at the end of the day means there's a huge demand and already now pressure in the urban environments for homes, and in particular for tiny homes and affordable homes. And basically, the way it all started with Wohn was about basically fighting inequality. That's where we started. So, and with the urbanization going, we saw inequality sort of increasing. Basically, the rich gets richer and the poor gets poorer because the distribution of wealth was unevenly distributed and carried on to be that. And basically, that's where we started. That's what we want to change. And to us, what's really the core of sort of feeling so unequal to the rest of us is, do you have a home? Do you have a place where you can call home? And basically the word Wohn is a German word which means home, basically, although we're a Danish company.
And there's nothing, I got to imagine, that's more degrading than someone being called homeless. Because we have all these sayings, home is where the heart is, home is the one place you don't leave or you always come back to. And yet we have a world where in the US there's lots of space, yes, and there's pros and cons to that. But in Europe, in a lot of the developing world, there's a lot less space, there's a lot less resources, and we've got to get a hell of a lot more efficient if we want to house everybody effectively.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's the point. And that sort of brought us to was how can we sort of make a supply and make a supply of these sort of affordable tiny homes. And what we then did was we then sort of looked at so what sources can we sort of use? And there we started looking at, say, what other problems do we have? We have a huge problem with waste, and particularly plastic waste. Less so with glass, but particularly with plastic waste. And the metrics there is, which is sort of basically unbelievable. Every year you produce, or we produce, somebody produces, the world produces 300 million tons of plastic. Only 9% of that is sort of recycled. The remaining 91% is basically wasted, burned, put in landfill, or just dropped somewhere.
So that's
and to me,
300 million tons?
Exactly, per annum, per year, yeah.
Wow. Wow.
which is crazy.
That is just
Every year,
it's
every
so
year.
much raw material. It's so much junk. I think that's what a big part of the reason I wanted to have you on is I'm shifting the focus of disruptors now to be more
Hmm.
geared towards the type of companies I think the world needs and the type of companies I work with as a consultant. Triple bottom line businesses that have a mission saving the world and making money in the same time. How did you
Exactly.
so it sounds like you had the initial thought process of this is the big problem, housing people, and then you tried to find sustainable ways to do it. It's not that you saw these intersection of issues and came to Wohn from that.
No, it was really, so as I say, a strong sort of wish and will to basically make change, make an impact, and was there all sorts of problems you can sort of try to solve. But to me, really, inequality to me is the core of the problems we see in the world today. Inequality causes for all sorts of reasons. The problem with inequality is that it's very bad living conditions for the people sort of involved, but also it really caused sort of social instability as well. I mean, the problem we see today is basically due to social instability. So that's where as I said, that's where we started. That's where we started sort of say, how can we actually change that? And then and then we start looking at homes, and after that we basically look at sourcing. What other problems can we sort of solve in our process of finding the right sourcing? The point here is actually that which is quite interesting, by using the waste, which basically we get in at a type of net zero cost, not totally zero, but a net zero cost because it is waste. Uh, that's a way we can actually drive our costs down on building these homes. And the same applies for glass. And then again, with all these many people, 200,000 people a day, as I said, moving to the cities every day, we have to learn to live smarter, to live tighter in the way we live. Urbanization as such, to me, is a great plus from an environmental perspective. But basically, the infrastructure around us in sewage works and pipes and whatever, the utilization per sort of kilometer or meter or whatever is a lot bigger in large urban environments, which is good. I live in the countryside myself, which is sort of ridiculous. We're sort of 200 people sort of using a pipeline of whatever 2 or 4 kilometers. Had that been a big city, you'll be 20,000 people using the same pipe. So from an environmental point of view and sustainable point of view, urbanization to me is really good news. The problem is that cities have big difficulties in coping with at the moment because the pressure is as hard as it is. And for that reason, we say, what's the hack here? And to us, the hack was these, as I said, affordable tiny homes built by waste plastic, waste glass. And it was a thinking process, basically. We started with a bigger scope, sort of solving inequality.
How do you create
Does it make sense?
yeah, how do you create the product? Because I feel like being able to reuse the used waste, that's something that a lot of
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs could theoretically
Yeah,
create their own versions of what you're doing, but completely different products.
yeah. There is, and there are some without saying too much. There are some tricks to it, of course, but basically it's about we take the waste plastic in, and the waste plastic can come from various sources. You have some industrial waste plastic, which is sort of the cleanest one. You have waste plastic from what's sort of collected in the general sort of urban environment. And at the end of the day, you have waste plastic, which is just floating around. And that's where we want to end with. That's also the reason why we think we need to tokenize the waste. We need to tokenize the homes as well, actually put a value to the waste and plastic floating around. But basically what we do, the waste, the plastic is coming in. It's sorted in whatever type of plastic it is, because there are many types of plastic, polypropylene, PET, POM, whatever. You have all types of plastic, and we have to get around which is which, And then we have special formulation. How can we then sort of grind them and melt them together, and then start sort of make these homes? And there's two routes of doing it. One is the sort of 3D printing, and one is about extruding, and then it's sort of a type of mixture of the two.
What percentage
And
of
that's
plastic
basically
is recyclable in this way? I know some thermoplastics are not able to be recycled, reused, broken down, etc.
yeah. To us, it's what's called POM, it's PET, PET, and polypropylene. Those are the three sort of major sources, both we have access to, but also which we use. And then though, and basically the when you get sort of at the moment most of them are sort of hard plastic, and that's more because they're easier to handle. But basically the plastic is the same, whether it's sort of soft plastic, hard plastic. It's, both are PET or both are PP, polypropylene. It's the same thing.
What percentage of that 300 million tons do you think would be reusable in a 3D printed fashion like this, or an extruded fashion?
Good question.
Just an estimate based
In
off of being in the industry.
Yeah, in theory, it should all be. There's not the only the PVC is a problem because of the chlorine in the PVC. When you start sort of heating it up, and it's sort of you get chlorine sort of fumes, which you don't want. Still, in Western Europe, or in Europe and the US, particularly in Europe, sort of PVC is not used that more anymore. You don't produce that much new PVC again because of the chlorine, but in theory it should be all of it. I think, and basically you have the people who work with this. Not many. Some companies, they take in plastic, they sort of try and sort of upgrade it and recycle it, and then it turns into circulation again. I think at the moment, many of them, they have problems because the process cost of doing that, they also have to sort of distribute into color and things like this, which makes it very complicated and makes it at the moment sort of uncompetitive compared to virgin plastic. We don't have that problem. We can use any color because it's all going down in the same grind, and that gives us an advantage here. So, as I said, back to your question, in theory, all of it, but some is waste. So, say 80% should be reused. By no means.
What other industries would you see stuff like this being applicable to rapidly, easily, cost effectively?
I think what's important here is you need to look into industries where you can take a lot of volume. And that's what we can. Because I think lots of projects around, so then somebody has made a new chair or a new pair of glasses or whatever. You need an awful lot of chairs and glasses to sort of to move and rock with these volumes. And that was one of the reasons why we say, what about building a home out of it? So home to me is obvious. I think also, and the way you do use plastic already today, because the point is plastic is not as bad as its reputation. The problem is with plastic is that we just sort of throw it away and drop it somewhere. Lots of steel is replaced by plastic, which is good news in terms of what the CO2 sort of develop during the process of steel compared to plastic. But I think houses, as we say, I see no reason why can't you make sort of basically sort of cars, not the engines, but the car design, things like the car interior out of waste plastic. But to me, I think the key here is it needs to be large objects if we need to rock with those sort of giant numbers. And I think this usage into sort of other applications is better and more sort of cost effective than trying and distribute the plastic back again to where it came from, because unless you can really say we don't care about color and we can live with certain tolerances, difficult word.
What do you think the future of cities looks like? I feel like we are moving towards many larger and more powerful cities, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on urbanization, what sustainable, eco-friendly, net zero cities in the future look like.
I think in terms of cities, I said the urbanization is happening as we speak, which means these many people go into cities sort of every day. And I think on a global scale, I think cities eventually will be stronger than nations. I think there have been written some books about that here and there, that actually cities will be the superpowers of the world rather than the nations. And I think the way the development will be is that when the cities learn to see their waste as a resource and being part of the whole sort of infrastructure of resources, I honestly see we can make these net zero CO2 cities. It also means part of the food production needs to be made sort of there as well. And then we come into vertical farming, things like this, which I also find is very interesting. But again, basically, it's honestly what I would like to see. Sorry. Get cars out of cities. So try and make cities more sort of people friendly, more sort of friendly for the people who actually live there, rather than make design in a way that you just have to rush through in a car. That's another point. But in terms of sort of where will the power be? I think the power will be with cities in the future. And again, it's good news. I think basically what's happening with urbanization, despite the fact that actually we have an increasing population still in the world, eventually sort of we are giving sort of the nature back to countryside, because people are leaving the countryside. And I think that's good news, honestly.
It's definitely good news. I'm curious, what are your thoughts and perspective? You're a European founder, and I feel like that has to have major implications on the type of business you're building and the outlook you're having versus someone who lives over here. What are the big differences you see?
Compared to the US and Europe?
Yeah, just European founders versus US founders, not the countries themselves. Those are clear and distinct.
Yeah. I think... honestly, I'm very sort of fascinated by the US founding scene. And I think in many ways, I think US founders are more bold, are more aggressive than what you find European founders. And I think you need to be that in many ways. On the other hand, I might see more type of social responsibility being part of the sort of European founders sort of frame within they work. But this is a very broad generalization I make here. But honestly, I like the boldness which sort of US founders have compared to US founders compared to what I see in Europe. And also I think the funding scene, so say what sort of financial resources are around is in many ways easier or more available in the US than what I see in Europe, sort of in broad terms.
I would definitely agree with that. If you guys are raising money, go to mattward.io/elevator. I've got a free step-by-step guide on putting together a perfect pitch deck and some other stuff for mission-oriented founders. But I would definitely agree with those trends that you have there, and I think that we need to be moving towards that world where it is more of the triple bottom line businesses. I think we're moving that way in terms of people wanting purpose, but it's still something that has a long way to go.
Yeah, I think that's true. Actually, I think things are changing rapidly at the moment. I think it's really what's happening right now with the wildfires you had in the US last year. You had them even in Sweden, in Northern Europe year before last year. What's happening in Amazon last year? We had Australia burning. I think that's really has pushed people to think differently. At least in Europe, you start, or maybe I'm talking as a Scandinavian. We have in Sweden you have a term called sort of flyskam, flight shame, sort of the shame of flying, and you can visually see that happening in Sweden, and that's actually moving towards also sort of having involvement in Denmark as well. Sort of train connections, so sort of night train connections in Europe, in sort of mainland Europe, is being sort of reintroduced. They were taken off the table just 5 years ago. They're back on again. That's basically because there's a push from basically from the population. The
It's
the
hard
the
because
the pizza thing about
it's usually so much more expensive to take the train is the hard part.
sure, and that's also the concern people have. But the notion is people are aware of the fact that we might want to find another way of transportation, and then it's basically it's up to the sort of lawmakers to say, okay, what do we subsidize the most? The crazy thing about sort of take fuel for airplanes is that's tax free. There's no tax on jet fuel, but you have all the taxes in the world on the electricity produced for trains, for instance.
And
So there's lots of
gasoline for
things you can actually
cars.
do there as well. Sure. Okay, I'm Scandinavia. Lots of tax on gasoline for cars there.
Yeah.
But still, you're right. What I'm trying to say is that I think things are changing rapidly now, and that's the good news. The bad news is it has to be this bad before we actually start to react as people, really, as human beings.
What's the government's role going forward? I think in a lot of ways, Scandinavian countries are almost role model type countries in terms of all that they've gotten right, but I think it's also a lot easier to do when you've got a small, pretty homogenous
Sure.
population that's also sitting on
Hmm.
a ton of natural resources and oil.
Yeah, well, some are not some of us are. The Norwegians
Yeah.
are a lot of natural resources, and the Swedes have in terms of water and so on, and water turbines. But I think you're right. Clear. The smaller the population is, in many ways, the easier it is. I think, honestly, I do think that I think private businesses actually can move things quicker than governments can. What happened, for instance, in Denmark is that if you go back to the election we had 4 years ago, we just had a general election last year. The election before that, four years back, environment was not so much of an issue. Clearly, you had some parties which were sort of flagging it high, others weren't. The election we had last year, the scene completely changed. 6 months after the election, the scene changed once again, which actually meant that now we have 70%, with this target being 70% carbon on our carbon footprint in Denmark, which sort of and it was the whole parliament that actually went forward. So lots of change happened there, and that push came from the population, which then forced the politicians to move. And that's what I think actually when you look at what's happening in the US with Trump as president and so on, pulling out of various or climate change deals and doing everything he can to sort of pull out of any obligation the US has sort of had. The good news there is actually that businesses started to stand up. Cities and municipalities, cities and counties started to, and states started to stand up, basically because the business case started to be good on sort of more sustainable solutions. So honestly, I think that there is I think businesses and populations drive the change more than actual governments do in many ways.
I could definitely agree with that, especially when it's I mean, the Trump situation is kind of like the kids on the playground that see the bully, and then the kids come and beat beat the shit out of the bully.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're hoping for, and we're starting to see with a lot of action in the U.S. I think it
Hmm.
is. I think it is still tough, but I'm a big believer in the power of business to make those type of changes. So having the basically once you can get the incentives aligned, incentive systems run themselves. What are the big problems you guys are struggling with now in terms of growing the business and scaling?
The problems we have, and it's not a problem as such, but where we stand, the next step is basically to raise the money we're looking for to finalize the product. What we did was that we went into the marketplace, basically talking to people, talking to various cities, municipalities, and so on, and say, is the market, is this what you need? Talking to various folks, and the response has been really incredible. So basically, what we have sold the product before having the product. And so we try to is basically to prove is a product market fit. Very sort of straightforward sort of commercial case. Is a product market fit for this? Is or just also think it's a good idea? And the product market fit is definitely there. We then started with student homes, but that's basically what's particularly here anyway in the world. What's small in size, student homes, and what's big demand, student homes. That's where we started, and they really sort of hang on to and so can sort of connect to the story. So what we do now, the problem is raising money, but I won't call it a problem. It's more phase we're in, and that's for sort of a type of seed round we're doing.
Could you go Tesla's route and pre-sell product enough to be able to fuel it?
Yes or no. The point is we don't, and that comes back to the business model we have in Wohn. We talk about sort of a new model of home ownership in Wohn, which basically about that you don't own your home anymore. We see a future where part of the home is owned by others, by third party. We call it fractional ownership, which actually means, and it's also about how can we redistribute wealth and make a business out of it at the same time. And what we looked into is that what's happening out there, sort of the trends. You do see a trend which is, I think some call it the end of ownership. That's what's happening. You don't own your music anymore. You don't own your movies anymore. It's Spotify, Netflix, HBO, and so on. Mobility is the same thing. You don't own a car anymore. I have a car here, but this is the last car I think I will own, actually. Next car, I won't own it. I would actually buy access to it. And we think the same thing actually will happen to homes, particularly if they're modular, if they're flexible, if you can move them around as we can. And it's based about how much room do you need now? Do you need one cube or it's a cube? Do you need one module, two modules, three modules, whatever? When you don't need that much anymore, basically you don't pay for it anymore. So we call it homes as a service. That's what we like to introduce. Which means, in terms of what's happening here, because we sort of own the homes, we sell 30% of a project. We will sell in fractional ownership terms, which actually means, and that's where the tokenization comes in. So, if you tokenize the building, the home, or the project, what actually happens there? If you are in a sort of developing country, you have moved to a city. Basically, you're poor. You live in a shack somewhere, but you do have a little amount of money. You can actually get access to the home market by buying a fraction of that home project over there, so to speak. That fraction might be in the sense of saying $1 or one dime or whatever. That doesn't matter. It's still small, but it actually gives you access to the home market, which you won't have today. As what I said before, to begin with, the way the sort of real estate market is developed is that those who have the money, they can buy the buildings, they can buy the land, and then make a fortune out of it. And those who don't have it, they have no access to it ever. We think we change that actually by sort of allowing fractional ownership of the homes. That means then to us,
you're trying to do two steps. If I put my business hat on, I think what you would be better off doing would be selling ownership of the homes to people in a Uber type style. So you're selling to the drivers, and then the drivers are then renting the homes via your platform to students. So students can sign up for oh, I need a night here, or I need 3 months there. You guys don't have to own the inventory. And then you're able to, as you continue to grow, start to scale up the fractional ownership of allowing people to own that. But I think initially you could offset your costs by basically franchising the models out to others and then managing it all for them.
That's true. That's true. It is actually when I talk about fractional ownership, that is, I say, further down the road. But you're right, and I like the idea about having a platform. When it says, as you say, we have a platform. Well, where we started was that we said, because we can move the home around, it's not built on a foundation. It's put on the ground via what's called ground block. It's a spike, basically, which means we can move it around. So we don't need to own the land. So if you have a piece of land available, we can put a home there, and then we can make a cut on the rent. But I like your idea where say you can sell it to anybody, basically, and then we make a cut on the rent, because we sort of make and offer the platform to the world of where can you actually get access to these homes. It's a good idea. It's a good way of doing it. Agree.
And you guys find the demand. You guys handle everything. Someone else just owns it and gets a cut of the check. Kind of like someone else owning a percentage of a solar farm. It's a really interesting model. I want to pivot a little bit now. You seem to be big on blockchain. I know you run a blockchain podcast and are very involved in the crypto community. I'm curious how that happened, why the enthusiasm, and what the state of the enthusiasm in industry is today.
Right. Yes, it's right. It's actually the podcast I run is actually paused at the moment because I had to quickly focus on Wohn. But actually, the reason why I'm into blockchain, it's I'm not that old in blockchain land as such. I've been in the space for 2-3 years, which is a lot more than many others. But those who started the space some 10, 12 years ago, clearly I'm a newbie there. But what I to begin with thought was interesting about blockchain was the fact that you could actually, again, going back to the fact, can you redistribute wealth? Can you sort of activate basically dead assets, make them active? And that's when I call it about dead asset, it could be sort of waste. We have the plastic, which you can put a token on it, and you turn the plastic into a home. I'm back to Wohn again. Turn the plastic into a home. Suddenly, you've activated waste and make a home out of it because you tokenize the raw material. I like the idea about tokenizing things and basically distributing the wealth into many people, and that's what you can in the blockchain space. As you know, you go down to the sort of the 8th decimal of value in any item. The blockchain space as such has been crazy. It's been very messy and lots of sort of you had the ICO craze 2 years ago, 18 months ago, and so on. And I think it's basically going through a natural cycle anyway, that you have something was sort of invented. The very sort of nerdy ones got involved. It started to get some traction. Then it starts getting into hype, and then it sort of get overhyped and explodes, and basically starts forward again. It was the same thing with many people sort of compared to what happened with the internet. Basically, lots of hype, lots of money involved, all lost, and then sort of started over again on whatever was left on the first wave. And that's what I see happening in the crypto space at the moment. Also, new sort of blockchain technologies and thinking is coming up. To begin with, was it was just a gold rush, and could I make a token, make people sort of try to believe that if you believe that this token has a value, it has a value, full stop. You need to have something behind it. And I think that's what's happening now with what's called the sort of security tokens, which basically you can sort of compare it to security, to a share in some asset or the other. And that's the route we are taking in Wohn. And again, the reason why we would like to do it is based on a way we can sort of redistribute wealth, but also a way we can also make some type of financial engineering. When you start working with those people like Maker, who make the DAI stablecoin, you can do some financial engineering there. If you have a real asset involved, which could work as collateral, then that's where the home sort of comes in. I think the blockchain market as such is maturing. It's growing up. It's still early days, but it's growing up. It has lots of sort of bad reputation to deal with in the general public space, and so be it. I think that might not be sort of new news anyway in whatever invention comes along.
I would say it's one of those things where it takes a while to get to what it can get to. I think that blockchain has some major potential in terms of ability to create transparency in things that are incredibly opaque. Mm-hmm. And by merely doing that, and then also bringing, so to speak, as you were saying, assets online, or having simpler ways of paying. There's a lot of different things that I find fascinating with the space. I get a little worried when I hear people are into blockchain, because I know most of them are into it, or a lot of them were into it from the past, either speculating on cryptocurrency or ICOs. But I think going forward, it'll be something where the blockchain can't be it has to, whatever you're building has to be uniquely enabled by blockchain and done better because of blockchain. I think most of the projects of the past were done in spite of the fact that blockchain would make whatever they were doing more challenging.
Yeah, what many people say is, well, why don't you make just a general database? Why does it have to be distributed and so on? Actually, I have a meeting today. We are part of a sort of accelerate, incubator type of process where when I talk to one of the other companies there who works with AI and also works with blockchain, or had worked with blockchain, and say, why don't you make sort of general sort of database with what we want to do? And again, to me, is we need depend on what blockchain you use. If you work on Ethereum, you can make these smart contracts. You can make some automation there, which I think is both very clever but also sort of important. If we have these, for our case, this fractional ownership of things, we need to know, say, okay, you own this part of this building over there, and the rent which comes in automatically goes back again to whatever fraction you have. And then I like as you say, the transparency, definitely, because for us, we see also blockchain as part of our supply chain. People come and say, well, come on, guys, you build homes out of waste, and yes, we do. And we know exactly what waste is in what building and where it is. And that's where we can use the transparency of the blockchain.
I don't think the waste part's important. I don't think tracking the waste and where it is important.
All right, yeah.
I think for you guys, blockchain could be very cool once you're established, but that it'll hold you back before you get to be established.
Agree. And again, what we do actually, we when we're talking to people, blockchain is part of what we talk about. But at the moment, we are talking about sort of turning waste into homes. So that's how we do it. And also when we are raising money now, it is sort of it's fiat. It's general. It's dollars. It's euros. It's krona. Whatever the currency is. That's absolutely right. Because the understanding of what you can do with blockchain is still very little amongst the general sort of investors and angels we speak with. Absolutely. Yeah. But to me, it's important to mention that we do see it as a way that we can actually redistribute wealth, which is a core part of what we want to do, and we can make money on it on the go.
Mm-hmm. What technology?
It needs to be a business.
What technology or trend are you most worried about, and why?
Yeah, the thing which I'm worried about is which sort of concerns me a lot it is very much about the surveillance, particularly sort of visual surveillance. In many ways, that sort of freaks me out, honestly. What's happening in China, for instance, is very, very bad. And you start giving people sort of, I can't read what the word is, but you give them sort of a score. Say, are you a good citizen? And we can see you're a good citizen because you do this and that. You get a plus score, which gives you access to
A Wohn Home. You get to live in a house versus be homeless, right?
well, maybe, yes, exactly. That could be. That could be. That's right. And on the other way, say, so sorry, Matt, you have some behaviors which we don't like. So we take away some of the sort of benefits you had before. That really freaks me out. Video is one thing, but surveillance in many ways. And you know the book by Shoshana Zuboff, I think is her name, this Surveillance Capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
Which is about basically the data harvesting and put that into and surveillance in many ways and put that into business. That's a very sort of bad type of sort of development we're seeing, and that's a sort of surveillance which people don't sort of realize. I think people are still very, very sloppy with the data. I actually think when you have more and more video cameras come in the streets, people start to realize what's actually going on here. And the point is, many people say, I have nothing to hide. What's the problem? That data might end up somewhere where that data could be a problem for you if you are in that same location. Or we have a regime change somewhere. Suddenly, we don't like the habits you have, and you sort of disappear. so
It's a super
surveillance.
slippery slope.
Yeah, it is, and that really concerns me. It does. It does.
And for people that think they have nothing to hide, in Soviet Russia, how it worked with the KGB was when something would go wrong or you would see something happening with your neighbors, you report them, because if you don't report them, something might come back on you. And over time, every the level just gets further and further because you report all of the bad people. But now if no one's being reported, suddenly there's still got to be bad people. So maybe that next level that's a little bit worse gets reported, and the next and the next and the
Mm-hmm.
next. But ultimately you find yourself, when you're reporting people, it continuously increases the level of what is and is not acceptable, because otherwise
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing becomes unacceptable. And
Exactly.
in a situation like that, you never escape. And even the ones who should be the Mother Teresas come under fire because the system requires its food, so to speak. It's a
Yeah.
scary slippery slope to tyranny. And I think every shooting, every terrorist event, it only moves us further in that direction. We never seem to go the opposite way.
No, exactly. And I should say, every event creates a new standard,
Mm-hmm.
a new normal, which is a problem, definitely. And honestly, I say again, also, and we talked about climate change and so on. We need to see some very bad examples, and people need to see them before they start to react to it. That's apparently the human nature. I don't know why, but that's how we are, unfortunately.
If you want to be
We're
scared,
sloppy.
if you want to be scared, folks, open up Google or whatever browser you're using. Go to Google, go to your account. You can Google a way to do this. Look up your
Yeah.
location history, and Google will be able to show you every single location you have ever gone to since you had an Android device, or Apple can do similar things, I imagine, with iPhone. It gets a little bit freaky. And then open up
Mm-hmm.
Facebook and look up your account history, and you'll see that message that you sent to that one girl 12 years ago while you were in high school. Yeah, that message is still there because in case they want
Exactly.
to use it, they still got it. It's privacy and you don't have it. And I don't know how we fix it without making people pay for everything, because the business model of free is the business model of advertising.
Exactly, exactly. I think you have Medium as an example, which is a medium where you pay for content. Um, I think there's a future of sort of paid content distribution. Eventually, there might also be a future of paid sort of information distribution. If I'm using Slack a lot, I'm using Twitter a lot. Um, I might be prepared to pay for it, but maybe it's only because I'm concerned already because I sort of
Then then we have a worse
I'm sort of
problem.
interested.
Then we separate the rich from the poor. The rich
You
get
do,
good information and a good experience. The poor get to sit through garbage and get the bad experience. You create that. It's
yeah,
the problem is
agree.
just mind blowing. I
Hmm.
also want to be respectful of your time, Morten. I got a couple
Oh,
last
no problem.
questions for you.
Sure.
Let's say you weren't doing what you were doing today. Let's say you were 18 to 20 years old. What would you do? What would you focus on, and why?
Yeah. Honestly, I think I would be down in this sort of impact route still. Say, I would like to do something impactful. I think the good news is most of the 18, you have a son who's 18 years old, I have a daughter of 16, I have another daughter which is early 20s. They are all going down the purposeful route and track. And I think I would do the same. What I would do today is actually, I would like to, or had liked to start some sort of practical science, practical science where you can make sort of impact on the world, basically build and make things. And that's anything but computer science in many ways. It's more about, okay, in terms of biology, in terms of other types of science, say, where can we actually make a difference? Can we make energy in a different way? I would like to study those and then be curious, be explorative, definitely.
Curiosity is
That's exactly. Be
it's the most
curious,
important thing.
absolutely.
And be
Yeah,
curious about the big problems. I like how you guys did it.
yeah,
Morton,
thanks.
if you had to leave people with one thing, it can be anything, a quote, a call to action, what would it be and
Hmm.
why? Before you tell them where to find you, of course.
Sure. Well, I think we talked about it sort of during the conversation, but it's really about put purpose first. Really, I think as a human being, as a person, I think we are obliged to sort of make an impact in the environment we are. Could be sort of in the close circles, and it could also be in sort of wider, more sort of global circles. But really, I think have a purpose in any action we do. And when you have found that purpose, where you want to make a change, be persistent with it. Sort of crack on. There are lots of people who like to sort of tell you you're going down the wrong track. If you have a real purpose, carry on with it. Don't believe what the other folks say. And it goes back to the point what I do as running a startup business. Perseverance. That's the name of the day. That's a core skill you have to do. And in many ways, you can say that also tracks back to politics as well. The problem I see in politics today, in many ways, is more sort of pragmatic, more sort of maybe even more sort of populistic, rather than running on a type of ideology. I like to see more ideology in what we do, because to me, having ideology is also having a purpose. How do I want to see the world sort of develop? That's what I want to sort of fight and work for.
Gandhi said it best: be the change you want to see in the world. And you know what? You got one ride on this roller coaster of life. You might as well make it fucking count. Morton,
Absolutely, that's your words. That's a lot better way of pronouncing it. Absolutely,
no
fully agree.
worries, no worries. English is my first language, so it's almost like a cheat
Sure.
card. Where can people find you, learn more about you and what you're doing?
They can. Well, I'm on Twitter. That's the M Bove. That's Mbove. That's me. And then clearly, of course, drop me an email which is Morten, my first name, Morten, at Wohn Homes, I better spell it as well, which is WOHNHOMES.com. Morten at wohnhomes.com. And I would really be happy to sort of get in contact with people who sort of share the same visions as we do. So like, can we change the way we actually sort of access and apply homes to the world? And would you like to be involved? Reach out, please. Please do.
And renewable resource creation for products, pretty cool, guys. If you're doing similar stuff, go to mattward.io/mission. I've got a free guide on there to help mission-oriented triple bottom line founders who are trying to build something great, make money in the process, and have that actually be beneficial for them in marketing, sales, PR, the like. So mattward.io/mission. Thanks for doing this, Morten. It's been a ton of fun.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.
And thanks for tuning in, guys. It's been an honor having you here. And until next time, cheers.